Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So obviously we are in a different location today. Welcome to my kitchen. It is kind of a mess, but that's fine. For my wrap up today, I decided to do something a little bit different. So I'm sorry if there's an echo in here. We don't have any carpet or anything to soak up that sound, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so today, during my wrap up, I am also going to be attempting to make chocolate macaroons. I have never made macaroons before. I also don't consider myself to be any kind of a professional baker by any means. We're gonna call my cooking skills adequate. I can make a lemon meringue pie, which means that I can successfully make a meringue, which is one of the harder parts of making macaroons, but that is it. This is very lightly inspired by the fact that the Try Guys earlier today released a video where they make macaroons without a recipe. I have a recipe. We are going to try to talk books while I bake one of the hardest pastries to bake for amateur chefs. So I've already got my baking sheets lined out. Now all I need to do is sift the almond flour, the powdered sugar, and the cocoa powder. So let me measure things out, and then while I'm sifting, I'll start trying to talk books. I told you down because I've realized that you can't actually see anything that I'm doing. So first step is to sift a cup of almond flour into my mixing bowl. So June, as reading months go, was not very great, in all honesty. I've had better reading months. In June, I did manage to read 7 books, although it didn't feel like it, and one of those for sure stretched into July. So I don't know how much I can really count that. Let's see, come on. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay, but it was okay. We had a lot going on in the month of June, and I know that in my last, in my last wrap up, I had discussed how we were pretty busy and there were going to be a lot of road trips, and I thought that that would help my reading. It didn't. It didn't really hurt, but we had a lot of stuff going on. So like on the 19th, we had to drive back home to Pennsylvania to watch our friend get married, and then literally the following, we came back here. That was a weekend trip, and then literally the following week we came back here again, or we went back home again. And my sister and my brother-in-law and our niece were visiting for a week, so we went back to see them because we don't get to see them very often. They live on the other side of the country. So yeah, it was busy. There were 2 very long road trips. It's about a 10.5, 11-hour drive for us, and I did not get nearly as much reading done as I wanted to, both because we were busy while we were there. I think I read more when we went up for the wedding than I did for like our week-long vacation, but we ended June in PA, so this is obviously an extremely late wrap-up. We're filming this on July 17th, so yeah. It was fun though, we had a good time, so I definitely don't regret anything. Why is this not working? Guys, remember how I said that I'm not at all a professional baker? This is probably not what you're supposed to do, but we're doing it because it's not, the pieces are not going through. I did the sifty thing. You're supposed to do the sifty thing, but then it's all supposed to go through. Maybe my sifter's too fine. Maybe I'm not being aggressive enough. I don't freaking know. Oh god, that was probably not the right move. So yeah, it wasn't the best as far as like what I read goes, and it wasn't the best in terms of content either because I was gone. So weekends are when I film usually, and obviously I could not do that because I wasn't here on the weekends. So you guys have been getting like 1 video a week, and that has continued into July because we just haven't had a chance to stop and think about life. I'm gonna try a different sifter because this is not succeeding. Okay, my other sifter is apparently much too fine because now we're moving along. So yeah, I only put up like a video a week, if that. I think I took a week off here or there. So, you know, we've had better times in terms of content, but you guys still got a video a week. I have also had a blind date with my bookshelves that has been planned for a while, and we have not succeeded in getting that out. Okay, next is 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar. So in terms of what I managed to read last month, the first thing that I blew through as soon as the month started, which I thought when it meant that it was going to go a lot better than it actually did, was The Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. And I was buddy reading this with Lauren and with Z from You Can't Catch Z. I don't actually know what their thoughts ended up being about that. I know that we kind of fell off on the discussing it train, but me, I loved it. It was the first thing that I read. I mostly read it on audio, and I really, really enjoyed it. We're just gonna do the second. It's 3/4, so one more. The narrator for the audiobooks for the Greatcoats is awesome. So much so that like when I moved on to the sequel, which I now have, I'm currently about 75% of the way through it. I listened to the audiobook for that as well because I was enjoying it so much. So yeah, we read Traitor's Blade. It was a buddy read. I adored it. There were a couple of parts that really weren't as good as others, and for me, that's the insta-love. And the slightly sexual assaulty nature in which it comes to pass it didn't really sit super well with me. If you read it, you know what I mean. The guy, the main character, was saying no, but it did not stop what eventually happened from happening. So that gives me kind of mixed feelings on that entire aspect of it. Obviously, if that is a thing that didn't bother you, that's great. It didn't bother me enough for me to like DNF it or anything. And ultimately, I really enjoyed it. I believe, let me double check. So it did result in me ending up giving it a 4 stars because while I thoroughly enjoyed every other aspect of it, it calls for 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder next. While I ultimately enjoyed the entire story as a whole, that part just really did not sit well with me at all. So we moved on to the second one, and I'm not going to talk about it in this video because that's very much a July read. But needless to say, I enjoyed my entrance into the Greatcoats world, and I can't wait to finish out the series. Sebastian de Castell, his humor is completely my style of humor. I really enjoyed it a lot. So I can't wait to move on. The other book that I started was The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which took me a minute to finish, like a super long time. I could not get my head into the mindset for this book, and I know that everybody warns you that when you come into the first Law trilogy, there's not going to be a plot, and you've just got to prepare yourself for that. And it turns out I need a little bit more of a plot than what it had. I do want to move on to the second book for sure. It's just a matter of when. It's definitely probably not at the top of my priority list. So, all right, we did that. We sifted, we discarded any piece that were too big, sifted a second time. I think that'll fit. I hope that'll fit. We'll see how this goes. I warned you guys, I'm not a professional baker by any means. If you are, I'm sorry for offending your sensibilities, but we're just trying to get it done. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, the first Law trilogy, I just don't know if that's going to be for me. I would like to move on to the second one and see how it goes, because while I didn't hate it, and there were definitely characters that I enjoyed, there were also characters that I couldn't stand. But the humor was also, again, pretty on point for me. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So we'll just have to see from here on out, I think. I'm gonna move on to the second one. I'm distracted because I'm doing this, but I realized that I never actually discussed with you guys what the Blade itself is about, or what Traitor's Blade is about, or the Blade itself. So taking a step back, the Greatcoats series follows 3 characters technically, but mainly from the point of view of Falcio Valmont, but you also follow Kest and Brasti, who are fellow Greatcoats, and They are members of the king's magistrates, and what they do is they travel the countryside, of which the name I don't recall, kind of serving justice in the king's name. They wear these special coats called great coats that have all sorts of fun pockets and things in it. They are proficient in weaponry, and Falcio specifically is the first cantor of the king's greatcoats, which means that he is pretty much in charge. And you follow them 5 months after the greatcoats have kind of disbanded, because my battery's totally not going to make it through this whole video, because the king has been murdered, and the greatcoats are actually seen as traitors because they sat back and let it happen. For reasons that I will not go into, but they do discuss in the plot of the book. And so you follow them 5 years after that. They're generally considered traitors. People don't like them anymore, but they're just kind of wandering around trying to make some money and find some odd jobs where people will hire them. And in the first book, Falcio's dealing with some personal stuff, and they're all just trying to follow the king's last orders to them before he was assassinated. Okay, so first, this has been thoroughly sifted. In a large bowl, beat the egg whites on medium speed until foamy. Let me do that really quick. Okay, so what I am doing now is I need to attain 3 large egg whites and put it into a mixing bowl. This is my KitchenAid mixing bowl, which is gonna do all of the heavy lifting for me in terms of the meringue. And then, like I said, I'm not going to talk about the second book in the series that I have already started, because I did thoroughly enjoy the first, but there were some fun plot twists that happened. The humor is great. I do need to mention that if you have not listened to the audiobook, you should, because I know I said it already, but like the narrator's so good. There's a couple of parts in the book where you they're singing in order to, this is gonna be terrible, remember the king's laws. And they came up with songs in order to do so, and they sing the songs while they're fighting, and it's delightful, and the narrator does such a good job of it, and it just sets a whole different tone for the fight scenes. It's great. I love that part so much. Every single time it happened, it made me super happy. We have 3 sets of egg whites. Gonna throw that in there. That may be a little loud, I apologize. So while we're waiting for the egg whites to get all foamy, I can finally move on in this. So that is generally the idea, my scattered synopsis of The Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. And like I said, I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 stars. Now, the First Law trilogy, The Blade itself, so I always confuse those titles. I don't really know how to describe the plot of this book. Many people on BookTube describe it as plotless. We might go with that. It was okay. There were characters I liked, there were characters I hated. You essentially follow a handful of characters. Glockta, who is a torturer. Logan, who is a former soldier kind of type, who turned mercenary, who's just trying to survive at this point. You follow another character whose name I can't recall at the moment, who's a very vain noble that is extremely skilled at sword work, sword artistry, he's a good swordsman. I can't speak today, it's fine. And maybe 1 or 2 other characters. I think there's a Captain West and a couple of other people that you follow in there as well. Yeah, it was okay. So I ended up giving it 4 stars, and that's mainly because the way that it ended was much more enjoyable than the way that it began. Things started really ramping up towards the end. I think that people have described The Blade itself more as an entry point into the world, and instead of thinking of it as the first book in a series, think of it more as an entrance or an introduction to the world and the characters. So I can see that, and like I said, I'm not opposed to moving on, and I would like to see what happens next. It's just not at the top of my priority list. The next book that I read in June was Questland by Carrie Vaughn. This was an arc that I received from NetGalley. I enjoyed it a lot. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Questland follows a character whose name that I cannot currently recall, she has a doctorate in literature and game things, maybe. Essentially, she's a super nerd. I mean, she loves all things fantasy. She loves Lord of the Rings. She loves D&D. She loves all of that stuff. And she is kind of pulled into a situation where her ex-boyfriend has taken over an island that was in the process of being built into, think Jurassic Park meets D&D. They're using science to make an island that is full of all of the things that fantasy nerds love. Animatronic flying dragons, elves, all sorts of things. Little villages of fluffy animal things. Like, it's so cute. And it's like called Questland. You're supposed to go and pay money to participate in quests, everything that every fantasy nerd has ever wanted to do. And follow clues and perform in like jousting and all of that stuff. And so she gets pulled in because her ex-boyfriend has taken over this and refuses to cede control of it back to the person who was paying for it all, and it has resulted in a bunch of people dying as they try to break onto the island. So she's there as the connection to the person who was taken over, and she's also there to help the team get through the clues that only a fantasy nerd would know. And did you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit? Sure. But was it entertaining as all hell? Absolutely. I mean, it made my little fantasy nerd heart sing. All of the references were great. It probably wasn't my best read of the entire year, but I really, really enjoyed it all the same, and I gave it a 4 stars. Getting it a little bit louder because that was not mixing it quite fast enough. The next book that I'm going to talk about, which I am honestly most excited about, is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is my favorite book of the year, hands down so far, which you will know if you watched my tier ranking video where I ranked all of the books that I've read so far this year. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir is his 3rd book. So he wrote The Martian, he wrote Artemis, which I have not yet read, and he came out with Project Hail Mary earlier this year. And guys, I adored this book. I adored every single second of it. I blew through it so fast. You follow Ryland Grace, and he is a middle school science teacher, but he used to be a PhD in, I don't know, microbiology, xenobiology, something along those lines. So he kind of gets pulled into this situation where humanity's fate is in his hands. He wakes up on a spaceship with all of his crew dead. He's the only surviving person, and he slowly comes to find out that something is slowly killing the Earth, and he is the one responsible for finding its saving grace. Yeah, I did that on purpose. Guys, it was amazing. I mean, the humor, it was exactly perfect for me. It's a first contact story, which I am a sucker for. The sci-fi, Andy Weir manages to get the science, for the most part, wholly accurate, and I really appreciate that because that's the kind of thing that will pull me right out of any story if I can poke holes in the science. It was great. The whole thing was fantastic. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I lent it to my coworkers, so I can't reread it right now, but I would love to reread it immediately. As soon as I finished it, I wanted to start over at the beginning again. It was just so good. There's no way for me to describe to you guys how much I loved this book. Okay. Brief camera change because I switched over to my phone. Switched over to my phone. Eggs are still going. They are now foamy. Let's scoot over here. Is adding a half a cup of sugar in, a tablespoon at a time. So we're gonna do that. So yeah, Project Hail Mary was amazing. I honestly think that it's going to be my favorite book so far this year. Well, no, it's definitely my favorite book so far this year. I think it's going to win as my favorite book of the year. But it is only July, so you know, who knows? It could change. We shall see. But 5 stars. If you have not read Project Hail Mary, guys, and you enjoyed The Martian, this is The Martian times 100. This is The Martian on steroids. I loved everything that happened in that book. first contact portion of it was so great. I loved it. I loved it all so much. So after Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, I read Legacy by Nora Roberts, which you guys know is usually top-notch content for me, because I love Nora Roberts. I have read almost everything that she's ever written at this point. She's great. Her standalones are my favorite, but the problem, and I talked about this a little bit in my reading blog that I posted. Was it a reading blog? Yeah, the one where I built my bookshelves. It just started to feel like her standalones are all the exact same story, which, okay, fine. But this was probably exactly the same to me in terms of, like, general plot of A Hideaway, which was a different standalone she came out with a year or two ago, which I loved so much more, except Hideaway was about a girl who came from a family that was legacy Hollywood. They were all famous actors and actresses, and she didn't really want to be in the spotlight because of things that happened to her when she was a kid, so she became a voice actor. And you follow kind of what happened because of all of that. This one, Legacy, was about a girl whose mom is very famous for being like a fitness instructor. She makes those fitness videos, and that's fine. She followed in her in her mom's footsteps. She also makes fitness videos. They kind of have the same job, you could say. They do collaborations, and she's dealing with a stalker, and it just felt, I could go into my thoughts a lot more in depth in that reading blog, but it just felt very, very similar in tone and in character to me, and it kind of fell flat. So Nora Roberts usually gets 5 stars for me, and this one definitely went down to a 4, which is still very good. I still enjoyed it. It just wasn't the grip me into the story, absolute instant love that I usually have with Nora Roberts standalones. Okay, this part I really don't know how to get it out of there. We're just gonna, I feel like I'm not supposed to be using my finger for this. I mean, it's clean, but I just feel like that might ruin it. Guess we shall see. Add it. Okay, so the next step is, I guess, to just add this in and fold it, which reminds me of that Schitt's Creek episode. If you know, you know. Oh god, I'm so nervous. Good enough. So we're gonna fold. We're gonna see how this goes. I think it's supposed to turn into a batter at some point. I'm trying to concentrate, guys. That's why I'm not talking about books anymore. I hope I didn't, like, overbeat. That would suck. But I wouldn't know how to tell if I did do that, so I guess who cares. So while we're, you know, folding, such as it is, so that was Legacy, and then the next thing that I started was City of Iron and Dust by J.P. Oakes. This seemed right up my alley, and if you follow me on Twitter or Goodreads, you'll know that that was not necessarily the case. This is actually the first book that I have DNF'd in a long time, and it wasn't even like a hard DNF where I reached a point that I couldn't read anymore. Well, I kind of reached that point, but it wasn't a hard DNF in terms of, like, I just stopped reading and didn't find out what happened in the rest of the book, because I did find out what happened, and I got to, like, the 60% mark or something like that, and just couldn't do it anymore. So what I did was I just skimmed the entire last, like, 40% of the book, and I don't have any regrets. I was not enjoying my time. I can definitely see how some people would enjoy it. It would be right up their alley. City of Iron and Dust is in, like, kind of an urban fantasy, but definitely in a fantasy world in which the Fae have been overthrown by goblins and are run by their goblin overlords. So, like, the goblins are in charge, they're assholes, and Fae are the oppressed. How do you know when you're done folding? Okay, what does it say? So I think we keep going because it seems blobby. I really hope I didn't screw this up. Lift and drop. Lift and drop. Lift and drop. So yeah, the goblins are in charge, they're assholes, Fae are the oppressed, and you come in to this plot pretty much at a time where they have had enough. They are done, they are forced to work in like factories that involve iron, and so it causes like cancer, it's a health hazard, they hate it. And essentially, the plot starts off just before there is a revolution to be had. So, you follow like 5 different characters or so in third person present, which is not a point of view that I am used to reading in, and I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing, because it seemed very different and I enjoyed that aspect of it, but it's possible that it could have seemed like too different and that's why I didn't like it as much. I really don't know. I'm not going to overanalyze it. You follow those points of view over, seems like maybe a 12-hour period as the city is in the process of being overthrown. I don't know. It was okay. I definitely can see how people would enjoy it for sure. I am not one of those people. It was not for me, unfortunately, which is sad because it was technically an urban fantasy. I mean, there were phones, there were cars, there was magic. It was definitely different because the goblins were not the hated, well, they were hated, but they weren't like, you know, the underlings. And it just seemed like there was a little bit too little of character development in it for me over a 12-hour period, which makes sense. I mean, if you have 5 or 6 characters and you're following them and it's only 12 hours, there's not much character development to be had, but I really just need a little bit more than that, I guess. Well, that's better. We're getting there, right? I'm gonna ruin this, guys. Maybe this is the hard part, not the meringue. Maybe I was totally misjudging how difficult this really was. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard, but anyway, so yeah, I think I gave it 3 stars just because I did get past the 50% mark. I knew that I could see how other people would enjoy it, and I definitely didn't think that I was one of them. But I think that if you like, it had a very interesting prose, and it was kind of a lyrical style of writing. So if that's your thing, 100% go for it. I mean, I think it came out on July 6th, so it's definitely available now. If you enjoy that kind of thing, give it a go. If it sounds interesting, give it a go. It was not for me, so I definitely don't want you guys to take away from the fact that I DNF'd it, that it wasn't good, because that is not the case at all. So, the last book that I read that I started in June and finished in July was Abaddon's Gate, sorry, back to books, by James S.A. Corey. This is book 3 in the Expanse series. Man, this hurts my arm. I didn't expect that. Which, again, this is my theme for June, which maybe kind of sent me into a little bit of a reading slump for July, but it was okay. I definitely liked book 1 and 2 better. I liked the viewpoints in book 2 better than the viewpoints that we got in book 3, for sure. I think we're done. I think we're good. Brief pause while I get my typing station ready to go. All right, listen, I got some tips from the Try Guys video, so I'm really hoping that they work in this and I don't make a gigantic mess all over my kitchen, because that would suck. I don't know which one of these to use. I'm gonna try the small one and see how it goes. Please tell me you didn't stab through the bags. Oh no, they stabbed through the bag. Okay, well, that was a bust. Let's try this again. Bag number 2. Okay, so in that video, they said to twist and tuck. Okay. Is this like a rubber spatula kind of deal, or is this like a, I have regrets. I don't know what I'm doing. Definitely not how I anticipated this going. This is the hardest part of the video for sure. Maybe it's a ladle situation. We're gonna try a ladle. This is probably 100% incorrect, but we're gonna go for it anyway. We're making a mess. Oh no. Oh no. I'm exposing myself on the internet as being 100% incompetent in the kitchen, and that's okay. Okay, inch and a half circles. So untuck, I would assume, and scooch that on down. This is not how this is supposed to work. I can't talk books and concentrate on this, y'all, I'm sorry. I have no idea what I'm doing. So definitely not an unbridled success. You know, I think I know what I did wrong here. Pretty sure you're supposed to fold it over on its, okay, let's attempt this in a different bag. We're gonna scooch all of that out. I don't know if that's the way you're supposed to do it, but that's the way I did it. We're gonna throw this guy out. We're gonna move on to bag number 3. Gonna refill the ladle. It occurs to me that I did not, once again, block off the part that I was supposed to block off. So this is gonna start dripping out in a manner unbecoming of what I wanted. I'd say this is embarrassing, but this is very difficult in and of itself, so I could be doing worse, I suppose, in theory. All right, let's not get overconfident. Let's stop there for right now. Bring this dude up significantly cleaner than last time. Go me, I guess, you know? Okay, then we're gonna come back over here and start again. Alright, listen, will you have seen prettier macaroons from a bakery? 100%. But here we are. It is what it is. They are on the parchment. Rack them a few times on the counter to remove the air bubbles and let them sit for 30 to 60 minutes. Okay, Alexa, set timer for 30 minutes.
30 minutes, starting now.
Okay, well, you guys will get to see the end-ish results. You're not gonna see me make the ganache because I'm going to continue doing what I've got to do instead of filming. So the last book that I had to talk about was, Abaddon's Gate. Abaddon's Gate? I really don't know. You saw my little crisis if you watched my tier ranking video. The third book in the Expanse series, it was very, very good, as are they all, but it was ultimately a 4-star for me. I can't really talk about the events of it because it is a sequel, but it does follow one of the same characters, and then a couple of other perspectives as well that are new, that we have not seen in either the first or the second book. So the concept was still really, really good. It still held me, but it didn't just grip me like the first 2 books did, which is what I loved so much about them. But yeah, it was okay. I gave it 4 stars. I did not continue watching the TV show yet. I don't really know what it is about this season, but the season of The Expanse, like, so I think it's like season 3 is technically where I'm at, just wasn't as good for me as the other two. I don't know, we'll see how it goes, but I'm going to try to continue watching as much as I can. As I'm reading them, I would like to move on to whatever the 4th book is. I don't know it off the top of my head. Sometime soon. Now I will say, in terms of my prompts for the previous month, which was to finish a series, I didn't do that. Booktube pick, which ended up being Ruin by John Gwynne. I carried it everywhere with me, but I didn't do that. Book with the prettiest cover. And I don't think I did this either. I don't know, guys. I might just, obviously we're already most of the way through July at this point. I might just carry those prompts on into last month and give myself a pass for the past month. I'm not drawing any more prompts today. I already decided that going into this, just because it's July 17th. We're halfway through the month, past it. So that seems kind of pointless. So I think that I might just carry those through. And I was planning to start Ruin this month. I do still have plans to do so. Like I said, I am in the middle of reading the 2nd Greatcoats book, which I am greatly enjoying. I'll be finishing that up, and then I will probably try and open up Ruin and see how that goes. So yeah, that is what I have read. That is what I've decided on my TBR prompts, just because last month was a wash. We had a lot going on. We've still had a lot going on this month. It's just been kind of one adult crisis after another. One adult crisis after another, and it has been stressful. And then at the end of this month we're doing stuff too, so I guess in terms of how summers go, guys, I'm stressed out, but you know, we're doing what we can. And I guess that ultimately wraps up my wrap-up. I will try and post a couple more vlog type clips of how these macaroons go and turn out and all of that stuff. But as far as the actual bookish content goes, I think we're done here. So, as per usual, I will try and link all of the books that I have mentioned in my description down below, which is also where you will find links to all of my social media, where you can connect with me on Goodreads and Instagram and Twitter. And I don't know why I said that weird, but it happened. I think that is all that I usually say at the end. So if you guys liked this video, it would help me out a lot if you would hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Other than that, I guess that's it for me today, guys. So I will talk to you in my next one. Bye!